When most people think of Disney's golden era, they picture wholesome family entertainment, smiling faces, and squeaky-clean child stars. But behind the glossy image, one of Disney's brightest young talents struggled with secrets that would ultimately cost him everything. This is the story of Tommy Kirk, the wunderkind who stole hearts in Old Yeller and Swiss Family Robinson, only to vanish from Hollywood, shunned by the very empire he helped build. What drove Disney to cut ties with one of their most beloved child actors? And why did his life spiral so dramatically after he left the Magic Kingdom? Brace yourselves, because this journey dives into hidden romances, tense set confrontations, and the painful reason Tommy Kirk died, estranged from his own family. Let's unravel the truth behind a Disney fairy tale gone wrong. A Star is Born. Tommy Kirk's story begins in Louisville, Kentucky, where he was born on December 10, 1941. His childhood was anything but glamorous. His parents struggled financially, so the family moved west, hoping to find better opportunities in California. Little did they know this decision would change their son's life forever. As luck would have it, Kirk's older brother Joe wanted to become an actor. He talked Tommy into tagging along for an audition at the famed Pasadena Playhouse. While Joe didn't land the role he'd hoped for, Tommy, unexpectedly, did. It wasn't some sweeping epic or big paycheck, but it was enough for an agent from the Gertz agency to notice him. Before Tommy realized what was happening, he found himself whisked from the small stage to television roles, showing off an uncanny knack for making even the tiniest part memorable. And then came the phone call that changed his life. Disney wanted him for the Mickey Mouse Club. At the time, that was like being drafted straight into the major leagues. Disney was launching a serialized version of the Hardy Boys, and Tommy Kirk got cast as Joe Hardy. Audiences adored the show, and Kirk's popularity soared. Among the legion of kids in those early Disney productions, Kirk stood out for his genuine warmth and, more importantly, his incredible ability to cry on cue, an essential skill for sentimental Disney features. When Disney executives saw how effortlessly he could convey heartbreak on camera, they handed him a film role that would become one of the most beloved and heartbreaking moments in Disney history: Old Yeller. In this 1957 classic, Kirk had to play a wrenching scene where his character is forced to end the life of his rabid dog. The sorrow on Kirk's face sold that scene so convincingly that viewers still talk about it as one of the most devastating moments in family film history. The movie became a massive success, climbing to the top tier of the 1957 box office charts. Suddenly, Walt Disney himself saw Tommy Kirk as a good luck charm. On more than one occasion, Disney introduced Kirk to others with pride, showing off his blossoming young star. To the public, Tommy Kirk was the all-American boy, an image that Disney would cling to as long as it served their brand. Unfortunately, Hollywood has a way of turning on its darlings the moment they don't measure up, and Kirk would soon learn how fast the tide could turn. The dark side of the golden era. You'd think that appearing in blockbuster family films would guarantee a sense of belonging and stability. Instead, Kirk found himself in a lonely spot. Despite the fatherly roles actors like Fred MacMurray played on screen, reality was a far cry from the warm family dynamic these films portrayed. During the shooting of the Swiss Family Robinson in Tobago, Kirk felt isolated and homesick, not so much for his actual family, but for the nightlife in California. Already there was a subtle indicator that the typical mom and dad environment people imagined for child stars wasn't part of Kirk's life. He was forging his own path, often surrounded by adults who had little interest in anything beyond finishing the day's shoot. Trouble came into sharper focus when Kirk starred in Bon Voyage, alongside Fred MacMurray and Jane Wyman. MacMurray, famously the gentle father on My Three Sons, snapped at Kirk for unprofessional behavior. The scolding was so fierce that Kirk later called it the worst dressing down of his life. As for Jane Wyman, an Academy Award-winning actress once married to Ronald Reagan. She treated him icily. Kirk suspected she'd discovered his secret and resented him for it. In a time when being gay or even bisexual in Hollywood could destroy your career, the possibility that co-workers knew was terrifying. More than that, the Disney brand prided itself on wholesome values that left zero room for anything scandalous. Behind the scenes, executives clearly preferred actors who fit the straight-laced, family-friendly mold. As the cracks in Kirk's all-American facade appeared, so did tension on set. He was under the microscope, being judged for the slightest misstep, whether it was a grumpy mood or simply not looking as physically robust as the studio wanted. Despite these pressures, Kirk continued racking up hits. Swiss Family Robinson was huge, and Disney brought him back to play Fred MacMurray's son again in Bon Voyage. Yet each success only made the looming secret more dangerous. Could he keep up the perfect image forever? In the cutthroat reality of show business, all it took was one slip to go from golden boy to disgraced has-been. Scandal and the underage relationship. That one slip would be far worse than Disney executives could have imagined. By the early 1960s, rumors began to swirl about Tommy Kirk's personal life. Some of it was typical Hollywood gossip, stories of rebellion, rowdy parties, and a child star gone a bit wild. But there was also a darker element. Kirk was gay, and not only that, he was seeing a 15-year-old boy. The fateful moment came at a public swimming pool of all places, where someone spotted Kirk being affectionate with his underage boyfriend. This incident triggered alarm bells. When the boy's mother discovered what had happened, she took immediate action, allegedly contacting Disney to let them know exactly who their teenage star was spending time with. In the early 1960s, such a scandal could devastate any celebrity's career, let alone the star of squeaky-clean Disney films. Even though homosexuality was heavily stigmatized, the bigger problem in the studio's eyes was the boy's age. Disney was catering to America's families, and the powers that be saw this as a moral crisis. Once the truth was out, Kirk noticed a frosty reception from the people who had once welcomed him with open arms. Studio employees stopped greeting him with friendly smiles, phone calls became less frequent, and Walt Disney himself gave the order to sever ties. Officially, Kirk's contract ended after the misadventures of Merlin Jones, but the writing was on the wall. He had to go. To compound the problem, Kirk admitted later that drug use had become a regular part of his life. Marijuana was a coping mechanism, and eventually more than that. He showed up on set high, further damaging his reputation. In his own words, he described that moment as the end of my fairy tale. The man Walt Disney had once praised was swiftly ousted, searching for a new home. If Kirk thought he could just slip into another prominent studio, he was sadly mistaken. In those days, being blacklisted by one major studio, especially Disney, could sabotage a career. Still, Tommy Kirk wasn't about to vanish without a fight. He had talent, a recognizable face, and at least some fans who wanted to see more of him. American International Pictures, AIP, threw him a lifeline, though it wasn't exactly the glamorous big studio environment he was used to. It was there he reunited with friend and former Disney colleague Annette Funicello. AIP specialized in teen beach and low-budget horror flicks, easy, breezy productions that teens flocked to in the 1960s. Titles like Pajama Party, It's a Bikini World, and Catalina Caper might not have earned critical acclaim, but they offered a paycheck and kept Kirk's name in circulation. For a short time, he managed to ride the wave of beach party mania, though his personal issues were never far behind. Not long after signing on with AIP, Kirk faced a Christmas party raid that saw him arrested for possession of marijuana. Police also discovered sedatives in his car. He insisted the pills were from a valid prescription, and eventually the more serious charges were dropped. But the damage was done. public perception of Kirk as a squeaky-clean Disney icon was long gone, and studios started viewing him as a liability. Worse still, Kirk was replaced in 3 upcoming films he'd already signed for. Each lost opportunity stung, but one in particular cut deep. The Sons of Katie Elder, a Western starring John Wayne that could have propelled Kirk into more serious grown-up roles. Instead, he was left scrounging for whatever gig he could find. His manager didn't care about Kirk's personal well-being or building a respectable resume. All that mattered was making money in the short term. Consequently, Kirk hopped from one forgettable project to another, never regaining the stable footing he once had at Disney. By the early 70s, Tommy Kirk's career had taken a nosedive. The lack of decent roles wasn't the only problem. His drug use escalated, now fueled by frustration and depression. One of his most desperate moves came with a role in Blood of Ghastly Horror, a low-budget horror film. It didn't sound promising, but Kirk was broke and needed work. The decision to appear in a non-union production turned out to be catastrophic. Because the project was not sanctioned by the Screen Actors Guild, Kirk lost his membership. This meant he was locked out of mainstream Hollywood films. Producers who might have been open to giving Kirk a second chance now couldn't hire him without risking penalties from the union. Without the financial backing or distribution networks of major studios, Kirk was stuck in the quicksand of cheap horror movies and other bottom-of-the-barrel productions. The more he struggled to escape, the more he sank. His personal life offered no solace either. Aside from the occasional party friend, he lacked a genuine support system. His family ties were strained to the breaking point, and the film industry that had once embraced him now treated him like a cautionary tale. Though he tried to keep some semblance of professionalism, his on and off substance use cast a shadow over everything he did. There was even a close call with an overdose that pushed him to the brink, forcing him to confront just how dire his situation had become. He realized he was nearing total collapse. No mainstream job offers, no union membership, no consistent paycheck. The teenage star who once ran around tropical islands on camera was now facing the harsh truth of survival with minimal options. Life beyond Hollywood. By 1973, the phone had largely stopped ringing. Directors and producers had moved on to the next wave of young talents, leaving Kirk behind with little more than a fading name in the credits of old Disney classics. With no studio contract and no SAG membership, he took regular jobs just to make ends meet. One of those jobs was waiting tables, where he might have served customers who watched him on the big screen just a few years earlier, but failed to recognize him. During this rock-bottom phase, Kirk decided he had nothing left to hide. In an interview with journalist John Marvin, he publicly came out. This was 1973, and few Hollywood figures risked such honesty, especially if they wanted to continue working in film. For Kirk, the choice was made easier by the reality that his career was already in tatters. If the industry wouldn't hire him, at least he could live authentically. Still, he kept an interest in performing. He took acting classes at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute, hoping perhaps for a second act. But genuine offers didn't materialize. The best he could do were minor or straight-to-video movies that barely registered with audiences. Strangely, after years of frenetic film sets, he discovered a certain calm in normal, day-to-day jobs. He briefly worked as a chauffeur, driving people around Los Angeles. If any recognized him, they either pretended not to or shrugged it off. The heartbreak continued. Kirk had no closeness with his parents or siblings. As he'd later reveal, his family had essentially cut him out of their lives due to his relationships. Instead, he pieced together a small patchwork of friends from old film sets who cared enough to stay in contact. Whether it was Annette Funicello or Kevin Corcoran, some of his Disney pals never fully abandoned him. Still, it was a far cry from the home life we might imagine for a man who spent his teens portraying the ultimate dutiful son on screen. Unexpected redemption. When the new millennium arrived, Tommy Kirk was living a modest life, far from the red carpets he once knew. He'd started a carpet cleaning business, Tommy Kirk's Carpet and Upholstery, and approached it with a diligence reminiscent of his early acting days. To the surprise of many, in 2006, Disney reached out with an olive branch. Despite the abrupt termination decades earlier, they now wanted to recognize him as a Disney legend. It was an unexpected, full-circle moment. Perhaps Disney's leadership had changed enough to see the value in acknowledging Kirk's contribution to their classic films. Or maybe they recognized that fans still held a special place in their hearts for the actor who made them sob in Old Yeller. Regardless of the motive, Kirk attended the ceremony. Instead of bitterness, he graciously thanked Disney for letting him be part of their family-friendly legacy. He said that if fans remembered him for anything, he hoped it would be for Old Yeller and Swiss Family Robinson. In those two films, after all, he'd played roles that captured the essence of young adventure, loyalty, and courage, qualities he wanted to be remembered by. Yet, even in this moment of celebration, the complexities of Kirk's life persisted. In 2017, he did a radio interview claiming he wasn't strictly gay but bisexual, having had relationships with both men and women. He admitted this was a nuanced discovery over time. Whether this was a personal epiphany or an attempt to revise his public image remains open to speculation. For many fans, the label didn't matter. They simply adored Tommy Kirk for his boyish charm and honest performances, cheering for him to find peace after such a tumultuous life. And by all accounts, he achieved some level of acceptance, if not a grand Hollywood comeback. He continued living in relative obscurity, running his small business and occasionally reconnecting with old castmates. The final years of his life were quiet, until a tragic day in September 2021. On September 28, 2021, a neighbor discovered Tommy Kirk's body in his Las Vegas apartment. He was 79 years old. Paul Peterson, a fellow former child actor, delivered the news to the public, thanking fans for supporting Kirk throughout his highs and lows. And then came a painful revelation. Kirk's own family hadn't been in contact with him for years, apparently disowning him over his personal relationships. At the end of it all, one of Disney's most cherished child stars left this world disconnected from the people who should have been closest to him. Yet the story isn't as bleak as it sounds. Even if his biological family wasn't there, Kirk still found love and camaraderie in the friendships he maintained with former co-stars like Kevin Corcoran and Beverly Washburn. These bonds, forged in the era of Technicolor adventures, arguably became the only family he truly had. And for fans who grew up watching him, the memory of Tommy Kirk as the brave, kind-hearted boy who faced down heartbreak in Old Yeller remains untarnished. It's a testament to how complicated and contradictory Hollywood can be. The studios that benefit from a child actor's success can turn their backs in an instant when that star no longer fits their image. Tommy Kirk's journey started with high hopes and ended in heartbreak. Yet there's a certain heroism in how he faced each setback, found a way to keep going, and ultimately made peace with the legacy he left behind. Perhaps that's the real takeaway from his remarkable life. Even in the face of betrayal and estrangement, it's never too late to own your past, find your voice, and discover your own definition of family. Thank you for joining us in exploring this hidden chapter of Disney's history. If you found Tommy Kirk's story eye-opening, remember that Hollywood has countless more tales, filled with glamour, conflict, and sometimes tragedy, waiting to be unearthed. Who knows how many other golden boys and golden girls have faced equally dark twists in their picture-perfect stories. One thing's for sure, when it comes to the world of entertainment, there's always more lurking beneath the surface.